fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The air hung thick with the scent of ripe peaches, a sweetness that did little to mask the metallic tang of approaching goblins. It had been years since the man had smelled them, and the familiarity of the stench brought back a flood of memories. He straightened, wiping the grit from his hands on his worn leather pants, and scanned the orchard with a practiced eye. The trees, once lush and green, now stood as skeletal sentinels, their branches etched against the sky like bony fingers. The peaches, too, had ripened and fallen, leaving the grass beneath a soft, golden carpet. But it was not the beauty of the orchard that held his attention, it was the goblins. They weren't the scavenging brutes of legend, the mindless beasts that ravaged and destroyed. These moved with a predatory grace, their bone ornaments gleaming against emerald skin like a soft, ethereal glow. And leading them, Kael, not the boy the man had taught to graft trees, but a chieftain carved from shadow and muscle. Kael's gaze, a brand against the man's skin, stopped him cold. A phantom ache flared in his thigh, a memory of sparring sessions that ended tangled in hay, Kael's weight pressing him into the rough wood. He tasted the ghost of Kael's mouth on his neck, the memory of their lips meeting in a fierce, desperate kiss. The man's heart quickened, his pulse pounding in his ears as he met Kael's gaze. "You've grown soft, human," Kael said, his voice a low rasp that vibrated through the man, sending shivers down his spine. His clawed hand settled on the man's chest, warm and heavy, like a physical manifestation of the weight of their past. The other goblins dissolved into the shadows, leaving them isolated, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. Kael leaned closer, his breath hot against the man's ear, sending a shiver tracing the man's spine. "Do you remember the lessons I begged for? How you showed me how to coax life from barren branches?" The man's mind flashed back to those long, lazy days, the sun beating down on them as they worked side by side. He remembered the hunger in Kael's eyes, the way Kael's hands had trembled as he learned, the way his face had lit up with a fierce, determined glow. Kael's teeth grazed the man's jawline, a deliberate torment, and the man felt his resolve crumble. "Now I'll show you how we harvest," Kael whispered, his voice a gentle breeze that sent the man's heart racing. The man's breath hitched, his chest rising and falling in short, sharp gasps. Kael's hand slid down his chest, fingers mapping the line of his ribs, and a groan escaped the man's lips. He leaned into the touch, a traitorous response, his body betraying him even as his mind screamed in protest. "I've missed the taste of you," Kael whispered, his lips brushing against the man's ear, sending a shiver down his spine. The man's eyes fluttered closed, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the moment. He felt the warmth of Kael's breath on his skin, the gentle pressure of his fingers, the soft rustle of his hair against the man's cheek. It was almost too much to bear, the memories and the sensations combining to create a maelstrom of emotion that threatened to consume him. And yet he couldn't help but lean into it, to surrender to the torrent of feelings that Kael's touch had unleashed. "What do you want from me, Kael?" the man asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. Kael's gaze locked onto his, the emerald green of his eyes burning with an inner fire. "I want everything," Kael said, his voice low and husky, his words dripping with a fierce, possessive intensity. "I want your heart, your soul, your body. I want to claim you, to mark you as mine, to make you remember the way it used to be between us." The man's breath caught, his chest rising and falling in short, sharp gasps. He felt the weight of Kael's words, the sheer intensity of his desire, and he knew that he was lost. He was trapped in a maelstrom of emotion, torn between his desire for Kael and his fear of the consequences. And yet he couldn't help but be drawn to the flame, to the fierce, burning passion that Kael embodied. "I remember," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. "I remember the way it used to be between us." Kael's gaze locked onto his, the emerald green of his eyes burning with an inner fire. "Then let us begin again," Kael said, his voice low and husky, his words dripping with a fierce, possessive intensity. "Let us start anew and see where the journey takes us." The man's heart skipped a beat, his pulse pounding in his ears. He felt the weight of Kael's words, the sheer intensity of his desire, and he knew that he was doomed. He was trapped in a world of passion and desire, a world that Kael had created, and he was powerless to resist. "Yes," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. "Let us begin again."